our chalice lighter today? Okay.
Frederick Buechner's a theologian and a clergyman, and he writes novels, and he has interesting things to say about almost everything. So I knew if he would have something to say about peace. So here's what he says about peace. Peace has come to mean the time when there aren't any wars, or even when there aren't any major wars. Beggars can't be choosers. We'd most of us settle for that. But in Hebrew, peace, shalom, means fullness, means having everything you need to be holy and happily yourself. One of the titles by which Jesus is known is Prince of Peace, and he used the word himself in what seemed at first glance to be two radically contradictory utterances. On one occasion, he said to his disciples, "Do not think that I have come to bring peace on earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword." Later on, the last time they were together, he said to them, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you." The contradiction is resolved when you realize that for Jesus, peace meant to have not the absence of struggle, but the presence of love. And when I think of peace, I often think of Mother Teresa. And so I wanted to see what she had to say about peace. And she's brief and to the point, unlike Buechner. She said, "Peace begins with a smile." She also said, "If we have no peace, it is because we have forgotten we belong to each other." And she also said, "What can you do to promote world peace? Go home and love your family."
Thank you for those quotations, Jim. I love those. Mother Teresa and Frederick Buechner, you can hardly do better than those two. Beautifully done. So today I want just to share with you some of my experiences with the United Nations International Day of Peace when I lived in New York. Talk a little bit about the mission of the UN and experiences I've had there, and hopefully open up a conversation for us all to join in on. Speaking of the United Nations, the UN was not created to take mankind to heaven, but to save humanity from hell. Dag Hammarskjöld, who was the second General Secretary of the UN, and a man of great vision and courageous leadership. He's got a book, his memoirs called Markings, and so full of rich ideas and thoughts. So let me just share the bottom line facts of the UN. The predecessor entity to the UN was the League of Nations, which was established after World War I in 1919 by the Treaty of Versailles. The League of Nations' goal was to encourage cooperation between countries and keep international peace and security. Unfortunately, it failed to do this and could not prevent the outbreak of World War II, and that was seen as a big failure. So the same community was reconstituted as the United Nations. In 1942, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt had a declaration in which he described the United Nations as a group of countries signing on, making a pledge to fight together and to work for peace in the world. Originally there were 51 members of the UN. Today there are 193 countries that are a part of the United Nations. That's pretty extraordinary if you think about it. They have a charter to keep peace in the world. There is an international court of justice at the United Nations, not on the same scale of the International Court of Justice in The Hague in the Netherlands, but there is a court. There is several organizations dedicated to the logistics of sending peacekeepers into the world and to send humanitarian aid to countries that need it. I think the UN really came into popular imagination maybe most recently in 1994 when the genocide in Rwanda broke out. And maybe some of you saw that movie Hotel Rwanda. Did anybody see that? Ah, what a show, right? That was incredible. But you remember the UN peacekeeper who was so frantic, trying, maybe that showed a little bit of the ineffectiveness of the United Nations because it couldn't stop what was going on, but he certainly did try. Romeo Dallaire, the security leader of the UN there at the time. Just something about those beautiful blue helmets, that blue color. Of course, as North Carolinians, we say that's Carolina blue, right? But what a thing, what a story, what a history. I remember when I first moved to the city, one of the first places, to New York City, one of the first places I intentionally went to after moving in and getting whatever we needed to set up housekeeping there. My first intentional day trip was to go to the United Nations and to see it. The second one is a place that I'm going to tell you about right now that's very much related. I went to the Peace Garden in Central Park. John Lennon lived across the street at Strawberry Fields. So I wanted to pay homage to this because this song is such a beautiful song for peace in the world, and it's so Unitarian too, you know? I mean, it's just the core of what we believe.
Imagine there's no heaven. See if you try. No hell below us. Above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It's hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for. And no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us. And the world will be one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us. And the world will live as one.
Thank you.
Isn't that beautiful? I get chills every time I play that song. It's so hard for me going to Strawberry Fields for the first time to imagine why somebody would want to kill John Lennon, you know? Just the heartbreak of the world we live in. But it is the world we live in, and this is the earth, this is where you live. This is where we live, and we have to find a way to make peace in this place. There's 6 more nations who are not yet members of the United Nations. And there are plenty who are part of the United Nations, particularly the more powerful ones like us, not always abiding by the guidelines or the ideas that are espoused there about human dignity and equality and equity and humanitarian equity and aid. So we have our challenges. We live on this earth, and so one of the things we can do is we can come together. This is the UN Tower, all the flags flying out front. How many, have any of you been to the UN? Okay, most of you, yeah. That's quite an experience, huh? Really, really breathtaking. This is one of my first visceral reactions to the United Nations. This pistol, in which the barrel is tied in a knot so it won't work. How cool is that? It is huge. It must be like 20 feet tall or something. My memory serves correctly. It's really tall. And it's right out front on the plaza. There's so many beautiful things about the United Nations too. One of the other things I really came to appreciate was the United Nations Chapel with this gorgeous window by Marc Chagall. Picture of creation and all kinds of religious iconography in it, but just the colors. And in the chapel of the United Nations, there's just this one huge stone. It's sort of in the shape of a rectangle with smooth edges, and that's the altar. It's such an interesting place. Jim and I were talking about this painting the other day. This is Norman Rockwell's golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. They have quite a collection of art and so many other things. Like they have the statue of, is it Jesus or of the Mother Mary from Hiroshima? And you can see the front side is still relatively intact, but the back side is melted from the blast of the atomic bombs. I mean, it just gives you chills to see that and to remember what happened. This one is probably one of the ones that captures my attention and disturbs me too, in a way. This was commissioned in 1955 by Nelson Rockefeller, former vice president and New York governor, in partnership with Pablo Picasso. This original oil and canvas, created in 1937, portrays the suffering and chaos in a town called Guernica, a Basque country town in northern Spain that was bombed to smithereens by Nazi Germany. It's been regarded as one of Picasso's best-known works, one of the more powerful paintings that they have there. So I didn't want to get too carried away with a lot of paintings, so I'd love to chat if you have a favorite one after the sermon. Now I want to tell you, as serving churches there, I had the opportunity to work with a woman named, she worked for the United Religions Initiative at the United Nations. Her name is Monica Willard. Dear friend, and she was on the founding board of the nonprofit that I started in New York called the Gardens of Forgiveness after 9/11. She's always doing something interesting and co-opted me to help her do these interesting things. So every year, kind of like what we're doing today, but maybe without a lot of the pyrotechnics that you can have in New York, we would have an observation of the International Day of Peace. The International Day of Peace was set aside right after 9/11 specifically to call for a ceasefire in any violence for a 24-hour period anywhere around the world. So a ceasefire to stop the violence if only for 24 hours, and take a breath and have another thought about what it is you're doing. Well, in 2004, I think it was, she asked me if I would help her host an occasion commemorating, celebrating the International Day of Peace, and I said, sure. And she said, well, I've been talking to Marianne Williamson. I said, cool. So she got Marianne Williamson to come keynote our event that night, and I had my buddy Fred Luskin from Stanford in town, and so they shared the podium and gave speeches. I couldn't find the pictures for that, but that was really, really spectacular. To bring people together and to talk about who it is that we are and why it is that we're here and what we can do to make the world better by creating more peace in the world. You know, Mother Teresa, one of her sayings really, really caught me up short right after the Iraq War. I've shared this before. I felt that the pretext of the Iraq War, that, you know, they attacked us on 9/11, was ridiculous, and I can't say I was very pleasant to be around. I was so angry. I thought about chaining myself to the fence at Ground Zero and protest, but then I thought, well, who would even care? It'd be a waste of a day. No, but I was just so upset. I went to the March on Washington before we actually invaded, and I was one of the angriest guys there. I was screaming my fool head off, you know. Then I heard that Mother Teresa said that she's never going to another anti-war rally like that, because she said people there are crazy. They're so angry. We should embody the peace we want to see in the world, like Gandhi said, you know. So she says, I'm going to peace rallies now. I'm not going to anti-war rallies. I'm standing for peace. I'm not, you know, standing against war. But if you stand for peace, you also stand against war, but you elevate the conversation a little bit higher. Another person who did that, and does that still, is a woman that probably all of you know, Jane Goodall. So in 2005, that's me in my 40s. I was so much older then. I'm younger than that now. Bob Dylan there. This is from her website from a long time ago. But she came to Ground Zero, and we had a ceremony in the yard at St. Paul's Chapel. And she brought all these huge peace doves that they're like sheets. And I'll show you a picture in a minute, but they're like these 10, 12 feet peace doves that are white, and she marches them around. So we had volunteers from my daughter's school, so the students there came out and volunteered to help. And so we marched those peace doves all around Ground Zero. And what a day that was. It was surreal, really, because at that point, nothing had been built, and it had barely just been, you know, excavated. So what a statement that was for her to come and be with us on that day, and what a memory she has. I saw her a couple of years ago, and I looked different. I wasn't wearing a clergy collar, and I said, you know, we did a thing. Oh yeah, I remember that in St. Paul's Chapel. She got, what is she, in her late 80s now, maybe later, and she has a memory of that's just really amazing. And each year in New York, they have events at Central Park, at the band shell. I don't know if any of you have seen the big band shell at Central Park. Well, every year, one of our friends used to host a vigil. And so she would invite all of her friends there to read poetry, or if you were at a dance group, they'd do a dance. If you were a musician, you could sing a song. So there I am, playing, and you see the guy off to my left. Do you remember Spook Handy, who was here a few weeks ago? Yeah. We were there doing a song together. We were doing a Pete Seeger song at that point. And what a great time we had. So these events really call our attention to community and peace building. one of the symbols and signs of this kind of community is this beautiful peace pole behind me here. It says, "May peace prevail on earth. May peace be in our homes and in our communities." Another group affiliated with the United Nations called the World Peace Prayer Society, and the director of that is a woman named Deborah Moldow that I got to know in New York. They came up with this concept, and there are now peace poles all over the world. There's one at Ground Zero. Certainly there's a whole section for peace pole at the United Nations. And this was given to us by our own Ellen, who brought this from this peace poles service of about, what, 20 years in D.C.? 20 years, it was posted in front of the Peace House in Washington, D.C., where they maintained and sustained an anti-nuclear protest for how long? Still going, right?
It's still going on. The Peace House isn't anymore, though.
Yeah, but the protest is still going on, and your late husband started that, I believe, right?
In 1981, yeah.
1981. That's amazing, and it's still going on. 41 years later. That's a real tribute. So the vibe in this peace pole is really deep. We don't know what we're going to do with it. We thought about putting it outside, but I'm not sure that would work for David, our the person who owns the place and who so kindly lets us use it on Sundays. But there are lots of options. We could mount it inside and bring it out for our services. It's a process. The peace pole is a process that's been installed in a lot of different communities around the world. Here's an image of what a Rotary Club did, and I think it's up in New Hampshire. Rotary is really big into peacemaking. The Rotary Peace Fellows is a very prestigious award. David Lamott, who's a buddy of mine in Ashton, Black Mountain, singer-songwriter, he was selected as a Rotary Peace Fellow. And if you get selected, they send you to a place far away from your home because they want you to be immersed in a different culture. They sent him to the middle of nowhere in Australia and then to India, and he spent years doing that work. So peacemaking, I think this is in New Hampshire. I'm not remembering completely if it is, but this is the kind of thing you can do with a peace pole. At the retreat center where I was working when I first moved to this part of the world in Zirconia, Takes Pond Retreat Center, we had a celebration of the International Day of Peace there, and we also put a peace pole there. So your ideas are very welcome. If you have a thought about how best to make use of this extraordinary gift that Ellen has blessed us with, let's think about that, because it's a centerpiece of who we are. And it seems like redundant to talk about peace because it's in our veins. But it's so easy for us to overlook it. It's so easy for us not to be reminded of it. It's so easy for us not to embrace it. I'll say it's so easy for me sometimes not to, because it's really easy to get caught up in the grievances of our current political climate and all that. Every year, the International Day of Peace has a theme, and this year, it is End Racism and Build Peace. End Racism and Build Peace. So that's a worthy goal. Secretary General Antonio Gutierrez had this in his statement on Friday. They observed the Day of Peace at the United Nations on Friday. Racism continues to poison institutions, social structures, and everyday life in every society. It continues to be a driver of persistent inequality, and it continues to deny people their fundamental human rights. It destabilizes societies, undermines democracies, erodes the legitimacy of governments, and the linkages between racism and gender inequality are unmistakable. So that's the theme this year. So each year there's a theme. I think last year it was about climate concerns. Yeah, so how can we connect to this wider movement in the world? As a tiny little fellowship here in Landrum, South Carolina, representing the thermal belt, how can we raise awareness? How can we reach out and share with others in our community what we know to be true? And that is that peace is not a path, it is the path. And the sooner we wake up to that, the better. I just wonder. I got another song to share with you, and then we'll have a chat, if that's all right. I just love these Unitarian choirs that have posted videos on YouTube. There's some spectacular stuff out there. I mean, in this video I'm going to share with you now, look at this elegant and gorgeous chalice that is a replica of the chalice in the Unitarian emblem, of the UU emblem.
So many people have helped shape our lives, striving for truth, they have lived and died. We remember their faces, we strive to continue what they strive to gain. Peace in our hearts, peace in our hands, peace in our lives, peace in our lands, peace unto you, peace unto me, peace unto all the world's family. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace someday. Deep in my heart, I do believe we shall live in peace someday. We shall We shall We shall overcome Peace unto all the world's
Isn't that gorgeous? This is a Unitarian choir in the Bay Area. Some good stuff going on in these choirs, you know. I keep thinking we need us a Jubilee choir here. Okay, so let's go to our, oh, sorry. Let's go ahead and extinguish the flame and say together, then let's have a conversation. We extinguish the flame of this chalice. Let us follow the light of truth until we meet again. Amen. So what thoughts do you have? I put a lot of ideas out in front of you, and I know that probably some of you have some thoughts you'd like to share. Yes, Ellen?
I have a couple of things that
Okay,
occurred
let
to
me
me.
get the mic for you.
Okay.
Thank you, Nick.
I have a couple of things that occurred to me during your talk.
Yeah.
Lovely talk.
Thank you.
One is that it would have been wonderful if you had gone and chained yourself to the fence.
Yeah. I think so too.
It would have been good for you.
It would have been good for me, absolutely.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
believe it or not, it would have affected other people, and other people might have joined you, just like what happened with that lovely young lady that, yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to tell everybody was that Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, which began in 1915, was actively involved in the founding of the United Nations and is a permanent member of the United Nations non-governmental
Thank you for
organizations.
that. Yeah. Wow, that's so cool. The name of the organization is Women's International
League
League for Peace
and Freedom.
and Freedom. Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. What other thoughts do we have? Yes? Dan?
When I was teaching school, and that's been a long time ago, so it's really way out of date, because I've been retired for 33 years. But one of the jobs that I had that I really enjoyed, and was really a lot of hard work, but was being the supervisor or the advisor for the children from our school to be part of the UN. And so what we had in Pennsylvania was that every year the UN would meet in Harrisburg in the big forum building there, which is very much built similar to the UN building itself. I mean, the auditorium part in the UN. And there would be children from every school in the state that would come, and they would represent different countries. It was really a big job. There was a lot of planning and, you know, things that had to be done. You've done workshops, so you know.
A lot of details, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of details. But I think I enjoyed working with all the children from all the different schools in the state, because they all came with one idea in their mind, and that was that we were going to be peaceful and be unified, and we were going to have a wonderful session of our state's United Nations. They learned how to say hello and goodbye and thank you and a few things like that in many, many different languages, depending on whatever country you were representing. There were just a lot of great things that happened. And the exchange students from other countries quite often would be special guests. And we always had a chance to highlight some of the work that they've done. And when they come, they had, I don't know if they do this anymore, but they had a goal in mind. When you were an exchange student, you had certain tasks or goals that you set up ahead of time. And so that was something they would present to the UN and say that this is what we want to do while we're here. We're hoping that we can spread this throughout the state and country and so forth. I don't know if they're still doing this or not. I mean, it's been such a long time ago. But it was a great experience to work with them. It was an honor to be invited back year after year to be part of it in one way or another. And, you know, things like that really make a difference, because then you understand the way the UN works, and you know what can be done and what can't be done.
Yeah.
And there's some real problems and, you know, some real barriers sometimes that you really can't just, you know, get rid of, even though you're there, everybody's there with the idea of peace.
Yeah.
Different ideas of what peace really means to people. You know, it's a little hard to be peaceful when you're hungry.
Yeah.
It's a little hard to be peaceful when you have no shelter.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are things that are still very important in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have to keep that in mind when we're
Was that
working
Model
in our
UN
community.
that you were working with? Is that the program? Was the Model UN program?
Yes.
Oh, that's still going on, yeah.
Is it? Oh, I'm
It
so
is,
glad
yeah.
to hear that.
Yeah.
That's
It's a
wonderful.
spectacular program, yeah. My niece was in it, and she loved it.
I never met a child that was involved in it that didn't feel like they learned a lot and had something to give back, and that was the
Yeah.
important thing. They would come back to their communities and do things. They
Yeah.
started volunteering, for example. And you know, that's another thing that's going downhill, is getting teenagers and youth to volunteer with things.
Yeah.
And that's something we could work on.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We just have to have an imagination to find the creative path that will invite people to participate. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, Barb.
I was one of those kids.
You were one of those kids? Nick, you're so kind. You're like our Phil Donahue. Thank you.
1958. I guess several of us, it's been so long that I'm not remembering the details, but oh, it was wonderful. But we met at the UN. We went to the model UN session there, and it was fabulous.
It's so electric to walk into that place. Yeah. Yeah, Robin.
It has to be about 25 years ago when my daughter was in middle school,
Yeah.
and the principal, she knew that I did children's theater programs in underserved neighborhoods, so she tapped me and said, we just got a grant from this DC organization called Kids at Peace, and it was to do theater projects to dispel prejudice amongst the students.
Wow.
And so it came with all this research and paraphernalia, and one of the articles was, but way back in the 70s and late 60s, they knew this, that if you could bring people together to work as a team towards a common goal, that was the best way to dispel prejudice. And that my play that we put together didn't necessarily have to be about prejudice, but we could dispel prejudice amongst the students by just having them work together on a common theme.
Yeah.
And it was very successful. We had a great time, and I've never forgotten that. And going back to the yard sale that we just had, it was a joy to raise the funds for Ukraine, yes. But I was just telling David, the greatest joy I had was we had just put out signs, so people who we did not know from all over were coming to
nice.
purchase, and they came from many backgrounds, but we greeted everybody at the base of the driveway and told them it was for Ukraine, and everybody, every single person from every walk of life agreed it was a good cause.
I love
And we
that.
have people who live on our street who we're friendly with, who we know are MAGA people, and they were helping us get set up, you know, so,
Wow.
and, you know, we tell people, okay, that'll be $12, and they'll say, here, take 20.
Wow.
You know, and some people, some people donated money after they made $2 or $3 purchases. It was
Wow.
incredible to
That's
see
awesome.
that we were all united because we wanted peace for Ukraine.
Yeah.
And, oh, I've had a keto moment. Anyway, I guess that's pretty much the point that I wanted to make. Oh, I remember now, Lyndon and I, several years ago, did these workshops with Pam and Charlie Rogers about how to talk to people who do not agree with you politically. And they taught us that you have to listen until you find something in common that you
Yeah.
can, you know, agree
Yeah.
upon.
Something to work together on.
And so this Ukraine issue is something that you
Yeah.
can talk to people of, you know, you wonder how you're going to talk to your belligerent, apolitical person, neighbor, or whatever, or family member.
Yeah.
Try Ukraine.
Yeah. That's a good point. I saw Pam and Charlie yesterday, by the way, and they're eager to come back. They said they're working on a new manifestation of that program. It should be ready early in the new year.
What do they
So.
call it? I forget the name of it.
They were doing something called Better Angels, I
That's
think.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
No. That was a big.
That's a different group, but I think they
No,
were
that's a
using
different group.
Yeah.
And they changed that to Braver Angels.
Braver Angels. Yeah. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah. What else? Some good ideas here. Yes, Andy.
Well, I wanted to pick up, you introduced us to the May Peace Be in our homes and communities.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw the picture in the big city with the little garden around the post.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking why we can do that in our community.
Yeah.
So maybe our UU can
Yeah.
push that idea.
Yeah.
We can introduce it to, like the Rotary Club, which you
Sure.
said was very active
Yeah.
than the other. But anyway, it's a thought I'd like
That's
to
a
see
great
us work
thought.
on.
Thank you.
Garden club.
Yes.
A garden club.
A garden club, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
When we were going around with Bob's book tours, we went to a lot of libraries, and they had these peace
Oh.
in their yards or in their
idea.
the area where you went into the library. So that's something we could think about doing if you wanted to. We could make some of those and
Yeah.
donate them to the libraries to put in their yards.
What a great idea. See, I knew you guys would come up with some good stuff. Yeah. Oh, Robin.
Well, we could maybe do a forgiveness garden.
Yeah.
Poland.
Yeah, it works really well in a forgiveness garden. Because as Bishop Tutu said, there would be no future without forgiveness. We have to figure out how to make peace so that we can create the future together. Yeah. I was just watching this last video, and that beautiful part where they sang, "We shall overcome." That's such an anthem of the civil rights era. But do you know who taught that to Martin Luther King?
Pete Seeger?
Pete Seeger. Pete Seeger is the man who taught that to Martin Luther King Jr. Yeah. So when I was doing concerts in New York, Pete did 2 concerts for our nonprofit. The young people would say, "Pete Seeger, who is that? Does he have a silver bullet band? Is he really Bob Seeger or something?" No, Pete Seeger. And then I tell them that he's the guy who taught that song to Martin Luther King. They go, "Oh." Well, Pete was playing a concert, I just read this past week, in, it was in an Eastern Bloc country. It was either in East Berlin or maybe it was somewhere. It was a place where they did not permit him to sing his songs, "If I Had a Hammer," "Where Have All the Flowers Gone," all those peace songs, and "Where We Shall Overcome." The government forbid him to sing those songs. He had a whole playlist of, at least a dozen songs. He goes up on stage and he says, "The government has forbid me to sing these songs, but they did not forbid me to play these songs. So I'm going to play them and you get to sing them." And the place was so connected. Music for a bigger goal, music for building peace is it's a movement. It's electric, you can feel it. That's another way. We do the concerts sometimes. That's another way we can do that as well. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah, Jim.
I have to be very careful when we start talking about these kinds of topics because looking at the enormity of the topic, I can become really depressed. But Ellen said, speaking about you chaining yourself to the fence, that it would change you.
Yeah.
And I think about something that Vince Lombardi said. He said, we shoot for perfection, we strive for perfection, although we know we can never reach perfection, but in striving for perfection, we find excellence. And so I think we're the ones that gets changed. The enormity of the task is if there's one country in the world that doesn't buy peace, it can destroy, or one person. It only takes one person to destroy peace. So anyway, I get a bit overwhelmed when we talk about these topics, so it's good for me to remember what Vince Lombardi said.
That's a great quotation. I didn't know that was him. It's so cool. Yeah, one of the ways I heard it too is that sometimes you protest not because you know it's going to change the outcome of what happens, but it keeps them from changing you, you know, and that's really important, Ellen. Thank you for that. Yeah. Anything else?
I'd like to add
Yeah.
to that, even if it's just one person out
Yeah.
there, at least the authorities know that there are people who don't appreciate this
Yeah.
or have something to say about it, and they know that that one person is representative of perhaps millions.
Yeah.
So it's important that that one person stand up.
A really important reason to write our Congress people and our senators. Yeah, yeah. Dr. King always said, each one teach one, each one reach one. We reach one, we've done a good job. Yeah. Widening that circle, deepening that sphere of reconciliation. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you so much. Let's have some coffee and keep the conversation going.